Right. Hello, Berkeley House friends. I'm sorry I've taken so long to get here, but before they go home on Monday, here is a video of my portfolio for the year. This is one of my arty kits. This was our very first project that we did at the beginning of the year, where we are the owl class, so they each had to draw their own owl, cut it out, stick it on a splattered background, make as many stars out of glitter as their age, stick down as many leaves and flowers as their age. They did tearing and pasting on the branch, and then they did a pattern with two different shapes around the border, and we did rolling over there in the moon, which gives one a very nice early indication of their ability to cut, count, draw, and their fine motor ability. One of our very first projects that we do at the beginning is they get to do a free drawing, which also gives me kind of an idea of what they like. They write their own name. I make notes about their pencil grip and all that, and we do their hand and their footprint. Our first theme of the year is my school. This year I chose to do another person drawing, or a person drawing of my new teacher. Our maths concept was large and small, or size. So they did a pattern with two circles. Our shape was circle, big and small around the edge. They did their human drawing, which gets scored against the good enough graph. And then they did long strip tearing, which again had to be a pattern with two colors. So we go on to the theme My Body, and our shapes after circle that we introduced was a square and the rectangle. So there again is a pattern with two shapes. The word My Body, if you look carefully, was actually cut up, and they had to find all the pieces and assimilate it. For the My Body shape, again, we did a person drawing, but we incorporated it with what does my body look like inside. To do this, they had a read and do chart, which showed them how many of what pieces they needed to count out, and then they had to figure out how to build their own skeleton from it. Then we go on to my senses, and this year I did it this way. I used the passport photo in the middle, and we did at the back there, it was long and short, which was another pattern, and the idea it was supposed to make a sound graph, and then they had to draw something there which makes a sound. For taste, we did bak en brou, and while the stuff was cooking, they had to find some pictures of food. For smell, we used different spices. For sight, they had to draw something that you can see. And for touch, we did a sensory collage. So the My Family theme, again, is draw a man. Obviously, there's also one-to-one correlation in there. We also did rolling again in the sun. We had to draw the house. The roof of the house, again, is tearing and pasting. And then inside the house, it was data handling and cutting out. So they had to furnish it, and I didn't mind what went where as long as they could explain to me why they put something in a specific room. Then our theme was summer, and this picture was a shape collage. The frame is all objects that begin with the letter S, and also it was a color by sum. So there are sums in there, and they had to answer the sum or identify the written word and match it to its number, and then color in accordingly. And we went over it with ink. They also do modeled writing, where I write on the whiteboard and they copy me letter by letter. So for the theme day and night, we did a picture which is a little bit more artistic. This was an attempt at doing Starry Night, which is just figure ground front and back. And then we also did a sun moon type picture where I gave them the circle and they had to decorate one half as the sun and one half as the moon, and we added glitter and we add sequins. When we do sequins, we put down the glue for them. We use white glue, and then I give them a packet of sequins or in a bucky, and you use a pencil with a sharp point and you dip the pencil in the glue and then on the sequin so it sticks, and then they can make a row of sequins without actually touching the sequin by using their pencil. It works very well for fine motor control. For healthy living, again, we did a pattern with two. This time it was big and small, so they had to choose one fruit, sort out all the big and small pictures of their one particular fruit, and then make their pattern. And we did the three different levels of, or three different areas of healthy living. So for exercise, they had to draw themselves doing some kind of exercise. Whoops. For healthy living, for healthy food, we did a more and less game, which started off with a sorting game, and then it was, we added in the dice, we added in the numbers, and it ended up with them having to draw their picture with the two bowls of fruit. There on the back, there was a little bit more of a worksheet type thing for those kids who were ready for it. And then here for hygiene, we did a symmetrical frame where I gave them the bubbles and they had to create their own symmetrical frame around it. And again, there we have tearing and pasting and rolling, which is your fine motor control. So this was the last picture in the first term, which was pets, and it was more of a free drawing. They had to draw themselves with the pets that they have or the pets that they like, and we used a variety of different media to color it in or paint it. In the second term, we started with the theme Under the Ground and Autumn. This year, I didn't do an autumn picture for the portfolio. We stuck to Under the Ground. So the frame is now a pattern with 3, gray, gold, and green. And underneath every block, there was actually the letter G. And I gave them a variety of different squares, and they had to choose only those that started with the letter G. Then we did horizontal tearing to get your ground layers. They drew their own inside of the volcano. They had to use a lot of patterns. We painted that. We did blowing, which is good for mouth exercises. We did rolling. They had to cut out fine, squish their foil and all that to make their fossils and things under the ground. For bugs and insects, we did a background which was supposed to be kind of like blurry, looking inside the bush. We did sums again. So the idea here was that the sum was on the one side of the butterfly, and the answer was meant to go on the other side of the butterfly, and then they had to color it in symmetrically according to the answer. They also had to draw their own insects, at least 3 insects. This one drew more than 3. We made a little spider where they had to fold the legs. So obviously gone squished now in the portfolio. We did their own writing. I often do weaving for the spider web, but for some reason we didn't have time for that this year, so we just ended up using the glue gun to make a spider web. But often what I would do is I would punch little holes down there, and it would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then they have to literally sew from 1 to 2, underneath to 3 to 4 to 5, and then they go backwards, counting backwards. So you practicing counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on all the legs, and then at the end it's matching the numbers. And then they do the thread around. So I thread all my 1s together, all my 2s together, all the way out. And then we ended up adding in our little ants and things. So this picture here was part of a story that I use as an e-lit story in the autumn theme. It's called, the original story is called Ouch. I've changed it to Holly the Hedgehog. I've got my own little thing that I do. So we do the whole ELIT thing where we tell the story with puppets, we act the story out, they retell it with puppets, we arrange the pictures in number order and all that. And then they had to draw their favorite part of the story. They had to color in the frame in a pattern with 3 different colors. And then they had to retell the story, which is where all the ticks come from. So those were all different things that I could assess in one picture. The autumn one, I took a photo of every child in the leaves, and then the idea was that they had to kind of draw themselves. We also painted leaves with ink, which they had to cut out. This kid can cut out incredibly well. And we also printed in the background. So this was a quicker, easier one, but there was still assessment of detail in the face and assessment of their cutting. For people who help me, the idea was a symmetrical frame. So they were given the frame with the gray blocks, and then they had to create a symmetrical frame working from the gray block outwards. In every block, we did a different person who helps us, and we used a different skill. So for the doctor, there was folding involved. For the policeman, there was a set of cards which they had to arrange in order of what comes first, second, third, fourth. So you've got your sequence, and then there's the final picture which they then had to draw. The fireman was a shape collage, and the little boat we folded, and then they could just decorate their own sail. So as part of that theme, they also do When I Want to Grow Up. So it was a free drawing where I assessed the amount of detail that they use in their drawing. And then they had to create their own frame with 3 different things relating to their job. So as an archaeologist, this child chose a fossil, and that's a spade. And if I remember correctly, that was a headlight or something that they use in the dark. But they had to explain to me what they chose. For the theme water, we ran it over 2 weeks. So we did a water cycle. I see this one must have been absent when we added the labels. So we did do a basic painting for the background. They did tearing and pasting for the cloud. We did some rolling and fine motor work again with the sequins for the rain. We did some rough scrunching for the top of the hill. They had to add in the river. We did a lot of rolling over there, and then the idea is that their water drop can go across the water cycle, and there were the words evaporation, condensation, collection, which were added in there. The other part of the water theme is the sea. So for the jellyfish, they're given the jellyfish. The second term we assess cut on a curve. So there's your curved jellyfish you had to cut out, and all the tentacles are also slight curves. Then they had to match the numbers to the number dot pattern. Some of them were numerical in order, and some of them were mixed up depending on the child's level. This is actually a clever kid. He should have had a harder one. Again, we had a little fishy which they colored in by color by sums. They had to cut it out themselves and put it on their background. In the background over there, they each had a different creature which they had to draw the symmetrical side on the other side. They added in their own sea creatures that they could draw, and then we just finished it off with some sand and some seaweed. So we've got maths, we've got cutting, we've got creative drawing, we've got symmetry all in here. For reptiles, the frame is again a pattern with 3. So it's long, medium, short, because we're assessing length at this point. And the chameleons were actually printed, and I pasted them against my window. So they have to hold their paper against the window, and then they trace the outline, but they were only given the picture up to there. So they then had to add a tail for each of the two chameleons, and one had to have a long tail, and one had to have a short tail, and we painted them and we printed in the background. And again, you see that there's sequins used. They love sequins, they love everything that glitter, and it's a really nice way to work with fine motor control. For dinosaurs, they were given the letters down here, which they had to find the right letters and arrange them in order. For the background, you can see again they were given papers which they had to cut along the curve and arrange them in a pattern with 3 colors. The dinosaurs were free drawing. They could choose their own dinosaurs. For the trees, I gave them strips of paper which they have to twist. The tops of the trees, they had to feather cut and then roll, and the idea was that it should look like a palm leaf. And the volcano, again, there was tearing in there, and we finished it off with glitter. And the sky is chalk, which has been scribbled and then rubbed. Birds, again, here I doubled up and I did the sound together with the actual picture. So it's for birds, but it also ended up in their portfolio. So we made a tree like a eucalyptus by using different shades of brown paper. We had a cardboard shape which they had to wrap with wool, and they had to add the head, which is made of felt, and the beak, which is felt, as well as the tail and the wings. And they had to fold their own pipe cleaners to get their legs. For the baby bird and the nest, the baby bird is rolled again with crepe paper. And this is just paper which came from the shredder, which we used for the nest. I gave them little butterflies to add, and they had to draw the 2 sides of the butterflies symmetrically. You can also see the background is crepe paper, which has been placed on the paper and then wet to get a nice effect. For the winter and weather theme, they had to choose 3 types of weather and create their own pattern. So everybody is different. He's gone thunder, snow, and partly cloudy. And then we did a position in space game, which I start with a grid, a physical grid that the children hop in. So they've got to move to the top left corner or to the bottom right corner or the middle block in the middle row. So we do it physically with our own body first, then we do it with objects, then we come to the table, and I will tell them to find the dark blue rectangle and glue it in the bottom right corner. So that's the way that we then do the base with all the colors at the bottom, and then we work on it in different places. I give them the shapes, and they have to put them each in the right place and add the labels correctly. For Misty, they draw a picture and we glue a single layer of tissue paper over it. So I love the Lorax story. So for pollution and conservation, I chose this year to do it this way. So the pollution part at the bottom, we made a messy painting with all mixed colors to get dark gray and greeny colors. They had to cut out their own factories. They had to draw the Onceler. This guy's even drawn him with an axe. And then at the top, we made our truffula trees by wrapping the wool around our fingers, cutting it and knotting it, which is a very nice way to start introducing tying shoelaces. They rolled their little tree trunks around a pencil and decorated them. And I gave them the basic shapes for the Lorax, which they then had to finish off themselves. As part of the pollution and conservation, this is the poem that we do. And the poem, if you look carefully, they had to cut the circle out And on the back of the circle, I had lines. They had to cut out along there, and then they had to rearrange the whole thing as a puzzle after they'd already colored it in. Then the recycle bins, each bin, his ones aren't loose, but each bin, inside it, they had to find the pictures and put the right pictures inside the right bin according to what we'd learnt the colors of the bins were and what the example was on the theme table. So for transport, we do water transport, road and rail. And here again, we did a color by sum. But for this one, the sums are actually on the back of the picture, and it's only the answer that is on the picture itself. So you don't actually see the sum here. They had to paint with ink and earbuds to do their hot air balloon. The sun, once again, is rolling. This time I tried to get them to roll longer pieces as well for the rays of the sun. The submarine, this kid's work's really very neat. The submarine, it doesn't even look like it. You can't even see it. But it's all separate pieces. This was actually something which my one student took over and did, and she didn't do it quite right, so I had to try and figure out and save it. But it did work out okay. And then we have some rough scrunching and some little shape collages with some detail. This kind of scrunching over here is when you take a square of crepe paper, you hold it over the back of a pencil to get it to kind of stand up, which gives you a nice 3D effect, which unfortunately doesn't work once it goes in the portfolio, but even so. So for the road and rail, they had to do a starry night type of background and make a hill and a road. The road, once again, is tearing and pasting. They had to draw at least 2 vehicles, cut them out and stick them there. The train, the locomotive, is a shape collage, whereas each one of the little trucks, you'll see it's all the odd numbers because we did a number bonds exercise in there. So if it's a 3, how can you divide? They had to count out their 3 things and decide how can I divide them. I can divide it into 3 and 0 or 2 and 1, and there you go. And then when they had worked out all their number bonds and they stuck their stuff down. Space is always a favorite theme, so we splattered the background, which is nice for fine motor. We did some of the planets, some of them are colored in, some of them is bubble painting. They drew some of their own spacecraft. They had to draw a man, and I got clever and made it that they can actually either have the helmet silver, or you can see the face if the visor is up. The threading over there, this was supposed to go around Saturn. He chose to rather have it as the trail of a star. So that again was just bits of straw because beads have become so expensive. And they had to choose 3 colors and arrange it on a pipe cleaner in a pattern with 3 different colors. And as I say, most of them, it actually went around Saturn's ring. So for the theme I Live Here, I always start the beginning of the year and I say to them, you know, if Marty Marsman came to visit me, what do people look like? And then I draw everything exactly as they say. So now they're all very into Marty Marsman. So now we said Marty Marsman wants to come and visit us. So let's make him a map. So first he has to find Earth, and on Earth he has to find Africa, and then on Africa he has to find South Africa, which again we colored in according to our sums, and by now we're doing minor sums. Then you can see he was absent here. Then he has to find the Helderberg Basin. He was only here for the painting. He missed out where we did tearing and rolling and scrunching and different techniques in each one of these areas, and the number correlated to a read and do chart which told them what to do. And then they had to draw a picture of their own house. And this is then where I also did the assessment of do they know their address, their telephone number, and their birthday. Oh, and in the background, I gave them, I think I said to them they may only use 10 stars or something like that. So also for I Live Here, we did a scene of Cape Town. So the paper down here is actually handmade paper, which we made by tearing it up and wetting it and making your paper pulp and making our own paper. The middle bit, they had to draw their patterns with a black Koki on a shiny piece of card, which we then went over with ink, and we dripped salt on it to get a different technique. To do the mountain, they scrunched up a piece of paper and then painted over it to get the rocky type of feel. They then cut it out, stuck it together. And this was term 3, where we do cut a circle. So they had to cut their 4 circles and then arrange them symmetrically behind, not symmetrically, concentrically behind the mountain. And you can see there again, we did the background with the crepe paper. And then for the protea, they had painted their paper. To save time, I cut out the petals, but they had to find the right size petals and the right amount. They also had to figure out how to make the center by getting all the bits together in the middle. Some of them did very well or not. And then at the bottom, the instruction was they had to use more small flowers than big flowers because we were doing more and less. For the theme opposites, we worked in black on white and in white on black, and they had to draw something which was an opposite. For those who are ready for it, they did their own writing. So he wrote day and night, so cute. And then he also wrote awake and asleep, if you can see that. And then in the frame, we did more and less again. So I gave them the example, and then they had to figure out there if the 9 is in the middle, what number is smaller than 9, and what number is bigger than 9. And I didn't say it had to be one smaller or one bigger. They could choose anyone. And then here it was by drawing pictures. What is more than the given 5? What is less than the given 5? So, but again, before we get to something like this, we've actually played with a little mouth before on the mat. So in the large group maths, we'll do physical games where they have to arrange themselves physically, that there's more people on the big side and less people on the small side, and then with objects and counters before we come down to doing it here in a frame. He was absent for Big 5. For wild animals, I gave them free choice. They could paint anything that they wanted, and I think his tiger is quite gorgeous. Then we do around the world, and we spend quite a bit of time on there. We did Italy this year, where in the background they had to draw the Italian buildings. After we looked at some of my photos when we were there, I told them they had to have a bridge and that most of the buildings were 3 stories high, so they had to draw according to the instruction. And then they had to draw the reflection down at the bottom. So it's a way of doing symmetry, but it's only symmetry one way. It's not a full symmetry. The little gondolier as well, the picture was actually the one half was given, and then they had to draw the other side, and they had to cut it out. The frame, I gave them a whole lot of little squares of different things that you find in Italy, and they had to pick at least 3 and make their pattern. You can see this kid actually chose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He actually used all 6. So he kept a pattern of 6 going all the way around his frame. They colored in their own frame and did their own their own flag and did their own word. For Spain, we were in Italy Europe a few years ago, and I loved the La Sagrada Familia. It was just amazing. So they painted a colored in picture, And then for the frame, I gave them Picasso. So I made this little frame with all of the different kind of Picasso faces, which they colored in with fine kokies. They had to draw their own soccer player using with the correct color uniform. And here we colored in the flamenco dancer and scrunched her skirt, and then they had to cut that out as well and add it to the picture. For Brazil, the toucan at the top, you can see the numbers on again. It was a color by sums. The parrot at the bottom was a free drawing, so I gave them lots of photos of parrots and they could choose and draw their own. The frame was supposed to be a symmetrical frame, so the two sides are supposed to match each other, but it didn't have to necessarily be a pattern with 3. A lot of them did a pattern with 3 anyway. For Holland, we painted the basic background, and then we added his is underneath, most of them are on top, but we added the sails that can move, the little people. This time we just colored in and cut out. Then I had given them the correct colors of paint, so they had painted the strips. I had showed them how to paint the 5 colors coming wider. And then we folded all these tulips from paper, and every child had to fold 25 tulips, 5 in each color, going smaller, smaller, smaller. And then they had to arrange them from small to big, overlapping. I think it looks quite cute. Okay, Yossi was absent here for spring again. So for the spring one, you can see the frame is just 1-to-1 correlation, drawing or sticking the correct number of things. Then the picture in the middle, they were actually given an envelope, and they were different envelopes. So you can see he's got a number 1 up there. He had envelope number 1. Every envelope had 10 little pictures in it. They took the 10 pictures out. They could arrange them on their paper. They could decide what was going to go where. And when they felt confident that they could remember them all, they packed away. I took in the envelopes, and then they had to draw what they could remember. And he's actually done very well. For the theme communication, we did a picture to music. So we have the music notes in the background, and we spoke about the value of the music notes. We actually even did sums according to the music values for those kiddies who were ready for it. Obviously, it's all sums that add up to 4 because your biggest note is worth 4. Then while we were listening to music, they just did scribbles, and then they had to look at what they found inside the scribbles and highlight part of it and color it in. He somehow saw a cowboy on a horse there. Then for our farm animal theme, again down here you can see we did a color by sum. So after having done that, I decided to use it as the base of my picture. So they had to cut along the horizon line of their color by sum and stick the bottom half at the bottom and the top half at the top. And then they had to draw and color in and paint the center part of it. For the piggy, they had to cut out their concentric circles and assimilate it. And again, for the sun, we've got the rolling. We'll go through an awful lot of yellow crepe paper. Over here for agriculture, we had we divided the paper into 3. So we were starting to do fractions. We've already spoken about halves. We do halves, thirds, and quarters. I don't go further than that. So here we're down to thirds: 1/3 blue, 1/3 green, 1/3 brown. And then at the top we had the sun, which again is your tearing. They had to, again, same as with the policemen, order their little cards in order to figure out how to draw a tractor. They were supposed to draw 2, a big one and a small one. The small one in the distance, the big one closer. They do their own cutting out and sticking it on. Then at the bottom, we stuck down our ice cream sticks. They drew lines across, which is the wires. You can just see his wires there. Then they had to twist their vines. They had to use 5 different vine leaves and solve the sum on it. And then every sum or every vine leaf was supposed to go with its bunch of grapes. We've got some very funny bunches of grapes here growing up into the air, but that's fine. And then they ended it off with drawing a scarecrow to go with it, scarecrow and some crows. Then this was a free drawing, which is a nice assessment for creativity. By the end of the year, they had to draw a poster of our school concert. And the theme of the school concert this year was Stories, Stories, Stories. It was about 4 broken books and all the loose pages in the books. And our Christmas picture, we have the nativity, which they had to do free drawing, human drawing. And then we added our shepherds and our sheep, which was a shape collage. The background was tearing. And here, this is not quite fractions, but we did try and get our nice sunset in the background. And then our final picture of the year is I am off to big school, and they wrote down what school they're going to. I love the fact here that this kid's got the mother's arms over there taking photos of him as he goes off to big school. So this is what our portfolio looks like by the end of the year.